Quan Minh, a veteran special operations soldier, is bringing up his daughter, Fan, from school. She is excited to choose a dress for the forthcoming prom and rushes Quan to the store downtown. He drops her off and then looks for parking. He ends up hitting another vehicle. Before both drivers can discuss it, a big bomb explodes nearby, destroying automobiles and shattering store windows. Quan gets up with glass in his face, but his thoughts are on Fan as he races into the wrecked business. Ian, a reporter, receives a call from the authentic IRA, which claims responsibility for the explosions and provides the code word Phoenix. The caller threatens to target banks if the British government continues to illegally occupy Ireland. Ian rushes to inform his employer, who is concerned that the peace accords are in jeopardy and dedicates his entire office to tracking them down. Ian runs over to the scene of the incident, which is now swamped with paramedics and injured or deceased people. As he photographs the horror, he notices Quan cradling Fan's mangled body and in tears. We then observe the authentic IRA hiding in a hotel room. When the bomber walks in and asks how many people he murdered, they decide to stay put because the cops are hunting for any Irishman at this point. We next meet Liam, the Deputy Minister of Northern Ireland and former IRA leader, in bed with his side piece when he receives word of the bombing. He receives a call from his wife, informing him of the news. She also inquires as to why he did not return home, but he responds that he needed to work some extra. He arrives at his office while on the phone with British Cabinet Minister Kate, who requests that he investigate the situation and identify the perpetrators. He tells her that in order to prevent any uprisings, he needs her to totally pardon 40 of his Irishmen guilty of crimes, including his cousin. Kate assures him that if he gets her names, she will consider it. Quan is standing in Fan's room, staring at her belongings in quiet, holding her teddy, and completely lost in thought. Two detectives from Scotland Yard arrive at his eatery and are taken to his upstairs house. They urge Quan to identify a pocketbook discovered near Fan's body, but Quan is only interested in finding out who is responsible and why his daughter is involved. Before they leave, the detectives swear to catch the bombers and bring them to justice. Liam meets with his former IRA colleagues, demanding to know who this new IRA group is and how they knew the code word was exclusively for high-ranking IRA officers, even assuming a mole in the room. He insists that they come over their whole inventory stockpile, finding and reporting any leaks. At Scotland Yard, Commander Bromley is following up on leads on the bombing when he receives word that Quan has arrived at the station for the 6th time this week. He speaks with Quan, attempting to reassure the father that they would apprehend the men and secure justice for his daughter. Quan offers to pay £20,000 for at least one name, but Bromley warns him that the men are extremely dangerous and that he should stay away. Bromley inquires about his family and discovers that, with Fan's death, all 3 daughters, as well as his wife, have died, leaving Quan alone. Bromley informs Quan that his trips are taking resources away from the inquiry, and that he should give them time to do their tasks. 3 weeks later, the police still have no clues, but Quan is determined to uncover something that would aid him. He stares carefully to Liam as he talks about the IRA on television. When Liam returns to his office, he discovers that Quan has left him a waiting call for 30 minutes. Liam answers the phone and Quan instantly wants to know who killed his daughter. Liam denies knowing anything about the bombers and offers his sympathy before hanging up. Quan then begins to burn all of the photos and newspaper cuttings, fueled by rage and vengeance. Liam, his business partner and friend, rushes in and tells him to stop. Before turning over the restaurant's title to her, Quan admits to having failed his family. Len refuses to leave him for the night and intends to sleep on the couch, but Quan departs and drives away. He gathers some supplies before returning and disguises his van as a cleaner's. Lam rushes out to confront him, but Quan pulls her away and departs. He takes the ferry to Northern Ireland and finds himself a lodging. Quan then arrives in Liam's office, holding a small bag and requesting to speak with the minister. The assistant recognizes him, and the guards in the room attempt to throw him out until Liam intervenes and stops them. They talk in his office, and Liam says that his connection with the IRA is over, and he is now fighting for peace. Juan reminds him of his own wife and child and requests his assistance, but Liam once again denies any knowledge. Juan informs him that he will change his mind soon before leaving the office. Quan goes to the bathroom and pulls out the simple stuff he has purchased, but then proceeds to construct a very sophisticated timed explosion before exiting a few seconds later. A powerful explosion rattles the structure. An inspector arrives to find out who did this, but Liam denies knowing anyone. Quan then contacts the office and Liam becomes enraged, threatening revenge. Quan demands the names of the bombers, but as Liam goes on, he hangs up. Liam then instructs his troops to score the town for Quan. Quan returns to his room with additional supplies and begins to recall all he learned in chemical class. Liam's drivers are getting into his vehicle when one notices a cable hanging from the gas tank. He carefully examines it, but it's only a note with the word names. Liam is at his office when he receives a call from his man, who has tracked down Quan's location. Liam issues the order to apprehend him and discourage him from returning. The men rush into the building, sprinting up to his room, but Quan barricades the door before they enter. Quan climbs to the attic, but men surround him. He fights off the attackers while fleeing to the roof and nearly falls off, but glides to the ground. He rushes back inside and is forced to fight many men, but with rapid movements, he knocks them down. The men seize Quan, but he fights them off and escapes through a window before fleeing. Jim, the top bodyguard, returns to Liam, who can't believe an elderly man beat them. Liam's nephew Sean arrives at the residence, and he requests that Sean travel to London to secretly speak with Bromley in order to enlist his assistance in discovering the London bombers. Quan returns to the address and knocks out the guard before leaving in his van. He follows Liam and sees him walk inside a restaurant to meet with his side piece. Liam receives a message and checks his phone, only to find a photo of him kissing and a note requesting the identities. Sean meets with Bromley discreetly to reassure him that they had nothing to do with the incident. They intend to assign distinct code words to each ranking member, and when the bombers hit again, Bromley will tell them the code word and allow them to deal with it internally. Bromley agrees on the condition that Scotland Yard take down the bombers, not them. Liam arrives in an off-grid spot he calls the farm, where Jim reports that they searched Quan's chamber and discovered signs of nitroglycerin. He tries to reassure Liam that he is secure, but Liam doubts him. Quan changes vehicles and drives into the woods, covering the van in shrubs before covering the footprints. He makes his way through the woods till he reaches Liam's safe house. He quietly enters a shed and begins to plant bombs. When a guard notices the open shed and sounds an alarm, he rushes to investigate, but Quan knocks him unconscious. Another guard has his ass kicked and is knocked out. Quan ties them up and leaves, and the bombs explode a few minutes later, causing the men to rush out. Liam notices this and tells them to bring in additional troops, believing he has underestimated Quan. He goes up to his wife and tries to assure her he has it under control, but she intends to leave his ass there because Quan is only for him. Meanwhile, the authentic IRA is planning another explosion after receiving notice that the code word has changed. Back at the property, Liam is getting ready to leave with his wife when an explosion goes off outside. They rush out to see a car overturned and discover that a bomb had been hidden in the driveway and detonated remotely. A few men set out into the neighboring woods to attempt to apprehend Quan, and they began sweeping the woods with their rifles. One guard trips over a wire, and Quan sucks him up in his camouflage. Quan is shot in the shoulder by Jim, but he runs and hides before Jim discovers him. Liam is now enraged, so Jim suggests bringing in Sean, citing his experience as a former Royal Irish Regiment soldier. Mary is alone in her London hotel room when Sean arrives, and we learn why she chose to leave Liam. The two are having an affair and proceed to make out before Sean receives a call from Liam requesting him to help them hunt down Quan. Mary then tries to persuade Sean against Liam, suggesting that he should be in charge. Mary is upset because her brother was slain by a hit squad, and she wants Liam to murder the perpetrators, but he refuses. Quan is alone in the woods during the rain. He cauterizes his wound before passing out from the pain. He recalls the night he and his family attempted to flee from China, and he was forced to battle for their life, losing his family but saving Yan. Liam is at home when he receives a top-secret file about Quan, which describes him as a lethal individual known as Humagrath. One of Liam's former IRA commanders from the Troubles appears and asks why his weapon dumps are being investigated. Liam informs McGrath that the Semtex used in the bombing originated from one of his dumps. McGrath denies knowing anything and insists that everything was in order. McGrath then informs Liam that he believes the attack should continue and attempts to encourage him to do the same. Liam says that he covertly ordered the attacks, but only financial organizations were to be attacked, with civilians spared. Angry, McGrath accuses Liam of being more concerned with his position in the British government than with the IRA's cause. McGrath then leaves, but not before Liam threatens him, warning that if the bombers are not apprehended, he will pursue McGrath next. Liam goes downstairs and calls for his dog, but the dog is already asleep. He checks, but his gun is also missing. Quan then emerges, holding him at gunpoint while revealing that he is wearing a bomb and wants to know who the bombers are. Liam maintains he has no idea who the perpetrators are, but outlines the strategy to apprehend them using the code word. Vaughn then gives him 24 hours before departing. Bromley is reviewing CCTV of the bomber when he notices a burn mark on the man's hand and decides to find him in London. Liam's sidekick rushes to a biker waiting nearby before a bomb detonates on a passing bus full of people. Scene arrives at the farm, ready to hunt down Quan on his own. Liam then receives a call from Bromley, who tells that the bombers did not provide a code word and believes Liam is manipulating him. He receives a call from Kate shortly thereafter, informing him that he will only be granted pardons if he locates and surrenders the bombers. He can't catch a break when one of his men, who is keeping an eye on Mary, informs that Scene has been smashing her, and then he sees her contact McGrath. The authentic IRA is plotting another attack, this time inside a computer. However, Bromley and his crew have identified the bomber and have video of him meeting with McGrath. Bromley phones Liam to tell him about McGrath, but he lies and says he doesn't know. Bromley, on the other hand, is keeping an eye on his property with a drone and sees McGrath coming up the driveway. Bromley reveals that a team would arrive at the farm and arrest McGrath, which will harm Liam's career. Alternatively, he might interview McGrath in his own way, providing all names and locations to save his own hide. Liam storms into the office and holds McGrath at gunpoint, furious that he murdered innocent people. He demands the man's names and shoots McGrath in the leg when he refuses. McGrath sobs, telling Liam that he used him, before handing him the names, where Liam is stunned to read his side chick's name and shoots McGrath again. Liam is concerned about giving up the names because his side piece could lead right back to him. He murders McGrath after discovering that Mary was also working against him. He then reveals the names to Bromley. The reporter is at his home with Liam's side piece, and when he goes to the restroom, she changes his laptop battery with the explosives before he returns. Scene is chasing Quan through the woods when he stumbles across a cottage and tries to investigate. But Quan ambushes him and attacks. The two whip out their blades and begin slashing at each other until Quan knocks him down with a strong kick. Scene strikes him and nearly falls into a spike, but Quan saves him. Later, Quan ties up Scene, who reveals the identities and locations of the bombers, including the one with the mark on his hand who murdered his daughter. Quan inquires about his family before setting him free. Scene returns to the farm and discovers McGrath dead. He takes a seat next to Liam, who confesses that the bombers did not provide a code word. But Scene denies everything until Liam informs him that he knows about him and Mary. He puts that aside and informs Scene that Mary used him by passing all of their pillow chat to McGrath. He gives Scene one final mission and advises him to return to the United States afterward. Bromley and his men have surrounded the room with snipers trained on the bombers. Dwan then slips by and enters the building. When Quan and the manager arrive at the door pretending to check a gas leak, the officers intend to rush the room. They let Quan into the room, and he studies everyone before noticing the man with a mark on his hand. They look through his belongings, and when they discover a gun, Quan rushes into action before a gunfight breaks out in the room. Quan captures two of the bombers but loses his gun, so he beats down another by breaking his head with a television before confronting another with a knife. Quan takes a towel and tosses the man down, strangling him to death. Cops quickly raid the room, but Quan escapes before they can apprehend him. They start beating the snot out of the side piece to find out where the next victim is, but she refuses until they convince her with electricity. They receive the information, rush to the airport, and locate the man in time. They grab his laptop and sprint through the mob before dumping it into an empty boarding tube where it explodes. Bromley receives the report of the Chinaman who entered the room and assaulted, and after gathering all necessary information from the girl, they shot her dead. Bromley then issues an APB for Quan, who is aboard a bus. Kate calls Liam and says that she knows about his side piece, whom she murdered. They are aware of his role in the bombing, but decide to withhold the information in order to keep Liam under her control. Mary is at home when the bell rings and Scene shoots her in the head. Liam arrives home, where Quan, who is waiting for him, discloses that he is aware of his side piece and informs Liam that he knows he planned the attack. Before leaving, he compelled Liam to send off a picture of himself and his mistress, informing him that the world would now know he was a terrorist. Lam is in the restaurant when she notices Quan working, as if nothing happened. Bromley receives word that he has returned, but refuses to send in a team, claiming they owe him. Yan runs to Quan, kissing and hugging him joyously, and Quan bursts into tears.